Hello lovely people and welcome to another Pride Month video. Yes, I know it isn't technically Pride Month anymore, but I started late because I was in hospital, so you're getting some video spillover into July. And just to be clear, for me Pride Month is every month anyway, because I'm gay every day. In this video, we're going to be talking about gender and sexuality identity labels. Gay, trans, pansexual, gender fluid, asexual, queer. There are so many that I am not going to list them all here. We'll also be covering how they intersect with each other and other identities such as disabled, black, autistic, Eastern European, extrovert, Hindu, blind, weirdly gifted at opening sticky jam jars. Probably not that last one, although it is one of the things that I find most attractive about my wife. And then we're going to be asking the big questions. Why do we need labels? Do they matter? Are they pushing us apart or bringing us together? For this video, I want to do something a little different and involve you, my lovely audience. So I ask that you send in video clips of yourself or written pieces that I could read out. Side note, yes, that does mean sometimes this incredibly white British voice will be reading out the personal thoughts and lived experience of someone who is very much not a dollop of mildly Scandinavian mayonnaise. However, it's important to have a voiceover for any text so that our blind and visually impaired friends can join in the conversation as well. Please excuse any noise from the builders. Now, there are a range of opinions here, and I'm sure you have your own, so leave your thoughts in the comments below, but please do remember that this is a respectful and polite space. If you do not agree with someone, you can express that without being rude. And remember that someone else's existence and the words they choose to identify with do not negate your own. You do not need to agree with someone to champion their right to a safe and humane life. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted clips and written pieces for this video. A special thank you to the members of the Kellgren-Fozard club who helped to make this video possible. If you too would like to support this channel whilst gaining access to behind the scenes content, downloadable goodies and my adorable face after your name, along with other perks, then click the join button next to the subscribe button, which you've already clicked, right? Also, Sarah and Tom, you're the cutest couple.
Hello, lovely people. Hello, beautiful people. That's BSL and then ASL. And we're repping the merch because we have it and we love it.
If you got it, flaunt it.
Exactly. Anyway, we're here to talk about labels and answer some questions that Jessica has asked.
But before we begin talking about whether or not labels are important, what are they? Throughout our lives, we're given a number of labels. The good one, the middle child, the arty one, the offensive snorer. These labels are intended to reflect our personalities and define our identity, both for our community and ourselves. However, an identity definer and a label aren't necessarily the same thing. An identity definer concerns who or what a person is as a quality that makes them different from others. It's not a Scientology thing though, even though apparently it also is, and I'm really not a Scientologist, and please don't come for me because I'm a little scared of you. So, examples of identity definers would be, what race are you? What's your sexuality? How would you define your socioeconomic status? Do you have a disability or illness? What's your gender identity? How old are you? Do you follow a religion? All these things people argue about on Twitter really, so those. Some people say that labeling ourselves in as many ways as possible, interrogating who we are inside in a number of different indices, is incredibly important, and the more the merrier. Others say that labeling ourselves and our communities is divisive and pulling us apart. That's the All Lives Matter crew. They think that the best way to make society equal and bring us all forwards is just to ignore the difference between us, and just in time everything will balance out. Or they feel that we're all so unique, we just are the way we are, so why do we need to define ourselves? And many people occupy the space in between. We talk about the areas where we're different from the majority, but we don't necessarily look at the area where we're not the minority. Most labels aren't innately positive or negative, and neither is the use of them. They can set useful expectations and provide meaningful goals in our lives. I would label myself as disabled, chronically ill, lesbian, extrovert, British, Quaker, white, vintage lover, probably some more. Some people may look at the label disabled and consider it a negative. Oh, why are you labeling yourself with something bad like that? You're so much better than the worst thing about you. Cheers. For me, disabled is a positive word to attribute to myself because it helps me to access the help I need to live my life but wasn't able to before I was classified officially as disabled. And it helps others to set their expectations. If I'm going to be on a panel somewhere, because I do a lot of public speaking and it isn't all strictly disability related, the organiser looks at their sheet, sees, is a deaf and disabled YouTuber. The organiser looks at their sheet, sees, is a deaf and disabled YouTuber next to my name, and knows that they should contact me to ask what I need. I beat myself up as a teenager because I wasn't as independent as my age implied, and then I was told, oh, that's because you're disabled. And I suddenly had these new limits, in a good way. I didn't have to knock myself out trying to reach the goal at the other end of the field. I could be very happy just playing on this side. Other identity definers, like those related to race, are of course impossible to ignore. I know, it can be confusing knowing the right thing to say, but there are no races. There's just the human race. Isn't actually anti-racist, because you're not being decent to someone by denying that their lived experience is different to yours. It's almost gaslighting. It's similar to when I tell someone, I'm deaf, and they say, oh, everyone has difficulty hearing sometimes. By denying that there's a difference, you're denying that allowances can and should be made. Lauren wrote in to say, I am a cisgendered black woman that's bisexual. My race is important because it's one of the first things you see, and being a woman is equally important. And both labels have an impact on how I interact with my environment and with individuals. But what about the identifiers that no one else can see? Our gender and sexuality, for instance. How could labels be important there? Whilst it's undoubtedly freeing to define yourself outside of language's restrictions, because words can just sometimes feel not quite right after all, there are also many positives to finding a label that just fits. Not knowing who you are is scary.
Hi, my name is Zachariah Robin and I'm an autistic, queer, agender person who uses he, him pronouns. These labels are important to me because they give me the confidence to be myself.
Often with gender and sexuality, when we're much younger, we just sort of experience it as a feeling. One we can't explain and we don't understand. It's just something, it just sort of sits there. You don't know how to define it. And that can be a little scary. You can feel a little like, I'm different, but I don't know why. And then one day you hear or read the word and it just all clicks into place. That's it. That's me. I'm a lesbian. Or similar. We're human beings. We don't love ambiguity.
Hi, my name's Eliza. I'm a 23-year-old disabled content creator from London. I identify with the labels non-binary, bisexual, disabled, queer, agnostic, and white British. For me, my labels are important, but some of them took a long time for me to identify with, particularly the non-binary label and the disabled label. But now that I have, it helps me to understand why I feel the way that I feel and why I love who I love. It's also helped me to meet other people who have lived similar experiences to me.
And another one of our submitters, Edmund, agrees. I'm an asexual, aromantic, specifically cupiosexual and cupioromantic, though I mostly use the umbrella terms, polyamorous trans man. These labels are pretty important to me because when I first came out at 14 as something different, nothing really made sense. And I've spent the last decade really starting to understand myself, what I want from dating and sex, and being able to express that so that I can be in a healthy place mentally and with partners. The positives of labeling. Affirming who you are. Labels can affirm who you are, not only to yourself, but also to the world around you. This is especially true if your identity isn't immediately clear from the outside. Maybe you have a hidden disability, or you're mixed race but you read as white, or you're bisexual but you're married to someone of the opposite sex, as Ashley explains.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and some of the labels I use to identify myself are cisgender female, bi-pan, mixed race, and I also identify as a spoonie or someone who is chronically ill or disabled. A lot of the ways that I identify, mixed race, bi-pan, chronically ill, are ones that other people wouldn't necessarily view me as in society, and so that helps me validate who I am to be able to use these labels internally. And secondly, I would say, and relatedly, I think for me using labels helps me to check and recognize my privilege, both for when I am part of the privileged majority, like identifying as cisgendered female, but also for when my labels are not really seen, so I'm assumed to be part of and treated like the privileged majority. For me, it's important to interrogate what it means to identify as part of a minority group while being at the same time read as part of a majority, and to reflect on how I I can use that privilege to help dismantle discriminatory systems.
Natasha thinks that it's important to be open about labels when you're part of a minority, because until told or shown otherwise, most people still assume everyone is cisgender and heterosexual. Because visibility and representation matter, because seeing a lot more representation of diverse LGBTQIA+ people a lot earlier would have probably made things a lot easier when I started coming out to myself in my late teens. And to represent something, you have to name it, of course.
My name is Sarah, and the one label that I really identify with and take in is bisexual, because that's the one that I had to claim myself. I am also a white woman and cis.
The second question of how important are these labels to you?
Oh, there you go. So the label, again, is important to me because being able to name yourself is very important. I mean, there are labels I think that we don't worry about too much because they are so standard and just it's expected kind of thing. So as a cis woman, I haven't had to own the identity of woman very much. Very lucky in that respect, but bisexual is something that I've had to explore. I haven't had to explore the others. I recognize my privilege in that respect.
And the way we identify ourselves to others is obviously crucial when pronouns are involved, as Alex writes. My labels are only important in the sense that they shape how the world interacts with me. I identify as transmasculine because I'm most comfortable with he, him pronouns. Of course, our identity is still our own, and not just for public consumption, as one anonymous subscriber wrote. I do not extensively label myself so that others know I am a femme, sex-positive, gender-expansive, blah blah blah, who is in a monogamous relationship. But for my mental well-being, it really helps to have these identity definers to relate to so I can be at peace with myself. Access to community. Many respondents wrote that they believe the more we're encouraged and able to understand ourselves, the better, as that leads to accessing like-minded communities.
I think using labels has definitely helped me to find community, finding, for example, the LGBTQ+ and also the chronically ill and disabled communities online has been incredibly affirming for me, and I've also found a lot of support and resources through those communities as well.
Elizabeth writes that she identified as white, female, bisexual, biromantic, demisexual, chronically ill, and disabled. Personally, my experience of embracing labels around my sexuality and health status has been liberating and helped me to feel less alone. Many feel that it's difficult to develop in any meaningful sense until we have a grasp on what we are at our core. Connecting with your identity means you'll find others like yourself and not feel like the odd one out in a species of 8 billion people.
I think identifiers are important because it makes it easier to find people who are like you and who you're more likely to connect with.
Hi, I'm Evil Smockbag, also known as Fry. I'm a 34-year-old, disabled, cisgendered, probably allosexual female lesbian, and obviously also a furry. Why am I wearing a fursuit right now? To illustrate a point. Labels are important. They help us find ourselves and people who share our sexuality, gender expression, medical diagnoses, or hobbies.
We are unique. No one fits just one label because no one is just one thing. We're all a patchwork of different identities and they don't all have to intersect or fit perfectly together. Having a variety of labels allows us to show how multifaceted we are.
I happen to like labels. My name is Daniela, and I'm almost 50 years old. I identify as a gay female or lesbian, but I also identify as a Broadway nerd or an entertainment geek or even a gooberhead for cons and meeting people. I'm also a Disney addict. You know, these things are labels that identify me, and I'm okay with that. There are many labels that make me who I am, and I like it.
Labels save time. Imagine if there were no labels at all. What a faff! It could certainly be difficult finding anyone on a dating site. I like people who have not broad shoulders. Unless they do, because that can be really sexy. But not superhero shoulders. Unless it's a certain type of superhero with hair that's short or long. Oh, for goodness sake, I just want Captain Marvel. I just want to date Captain Marvel. Honestly, the label that's made my life 100% easier when I use it is wife. It really cuts down on the panicked eye thing that people do when we go to a doctor's appointment or check into a hotel together. Are they sisters? Are they in a relationship? Is that her carer? Are they going to be deeply offended if I ask? This is my wife. Oh, thank you. Equally, pronouns. Share them. Hi, I'm Jessica. My pronouns are she, her. Hi, I'm Alex. My pronouns are they, them. Hi, Alex. Thanks for letting me know. Or maybe I want to watch a film in which two women fall in love. It's much easier to find if I type lesbian into Netflix or search best lesbian movies on Google. Maybe I want to watch a TV show with a non-binary character. I can Google that. Side note, it would be really great if the LGBTQ+ category of films wasn't just 90% gay white men. Hollywood, can you maybe work on some diversity? Labels can evolve. Many people's labels change over time, but that doesn't mean that the previous label was wrong, just that it applied then but doesn't now. Equally, we can reclaim words like queer and use it as an umbrella term if needed to show that we're somewhere on these spectrums of gender and sexuality. We're just not quite sure where right now.
Hi, my name is Yasmin. I am a white atheist nursing student. I identify as a bisexual woman, and these labels are important to me because I want to understand myself. I thought that I was demisexual for a long time, but that was because of my depression. I didn't have a sex drive, but that was just because of the sickness. I got sick when I was a teenager, so I just assumed that that was who I am. But now that I have gotten better, I understand that, well, not to say that demisexuals aren't normal, but it wasn't normal for me. And last week I got diagnosed with autism, so pretty sure a lot of my strengths have been going into the masking instead of my libido.
Steve wrote that he started out as bi as a very few and short relationships as a teen I had with girls, but I'd always found men attractive and doubled it in secondary school. So now, having a boyfriend, I can clearly see myself as a gay man.
Overall, I think that labels are important, but it's also important to remember that they do change and adapt depending on what's going on in your life at the time, and that you can identify with one label for a certain amount of years and then it can change and adapt as you grow to understand yourself. So I also think that it's important to use them lightly, but to remember that you can meet amazing people part of communities that are similar to yours. So I think overall, they are important.
And thus we conclude part 1 of Are Labels Important? Part 2, looking at how labels can be detrimental, will be out next Tuesday, or if you're watching this video after the 7th of July 2020, you can just find it linked in the description below, so it's a lot simpler. Thank you so much for watching, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you very soon.